And now on to the big debate. Now, it's been almost 2 weeks since the American whistleblower Edward Snowden went on a run from the US authorities after stealing sensitive data whilst working as an intelligence officer at the National Security Agency. Technically stateless after having his American citizenship revoked, Snowden initially fled to Hong Kong from Hawaii with the help of WikiLeaks and the Guardian newspaper, from where his identity was first revealed to the world. But for the past week or so, he's also been stuck in transit in Moscow, with no countries seemingly willing to accept him. Now there's talks that he's on the same plane as the Bolivian president, tarmacked in Vienna, a claim that has been denied by both the Bolivians and the Austrians. To say he's in limbo is an understatement. Yesterday, Russia said they offer him political asylum, but Snowden turned them down. So is he still hoping to go to Ecuador, or Bolivia, or Venezuela? Why did he go to Hong Kong, and why is America powerless to arrest him? Is this the biggest diplomatic wrangling we've had involving America and some of its biggest rivals since the Cold War? And what of the contents in his files? The bugging of EU offices by America, data harvesting here at Tsinghua University, and 500 million text messages read in Germany. So is he a selfless hero or a traitor and a villain to his country?
And so today, join us in the studio for our discussion is Qianli Wei, Research Fellow from China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. And also join us on the phone are Zhang Baohui, Professor of Political Science from Hong Kong's Lingnan University, and also Konstantin Shepin, Beijing-based Russian journalist. But now to start with our discussion, before we discuss the fate and the whereabouts about Edward Snowden, an editorial in the Gulf News says the Americans should just give up and grant him a pardon as his crime is one of conscience. And also it says an accountable government should give up this chase. So Qianli Wei, do you agree with this?
No, I don't think so. From the point of Obama administration, considering how Snowden has harmed, in regard of the intelligence community in the U.S., but also I think the U.S. government is gravely humiliated in the international community. So I think the Obama government administration will never give up to pursue Snowden.
And Konstantin Shepin, do you think the America is right to pursue this urgent matter of national security and betrayal, or do you think it's wrong for them to pursue someone who committed what many describe as a humanitarian act?
First of all, I want to say I don't see the legal basis for Americans to pursue Snowden right now, because Snowden is not a U.S. citizen anymore. They took away his passport, first of all. So how can they pursue him as a American citizen? Yet he is not pronounced to be an international terrorist. So I don't see the legal basis of Washington to run after Snowden. From the judicial point of view, it's just not feasible right now. Second of all, speaking of Snowden as a traitor or as a hero or whatsoever, I don't think there's a single and the utmost truth in this case. There are lots of truths, one truth from the American side, one truth from the side of international community, and every single country have their own and pretty much feasible position. I think what we should talk about right now is the harm is done, and I think a pretty huge one, and how to deal with that harm. That's what should be thought about right now by guys in Washington.
And Professor Zhang Baohui, you're in Hong Kong, which of course was where we all learned about these revelations and the identity of Edward Snowden a couple of weeks ago. What do you make of his? What is he a hero so far, or is he? Should America just back off and just leave him be?
Well, I think in the eyes of almost everyone outside the U.S., this guy is a hero, no doubt about it. But the point is, the U.S. has to bring him so-called to justice, at least to deter potential future whistleblowers. And so to lend credibility to its legal deterrence, the U.S. still has to try to bring him back to the U.S. And we shouldn't forget, the United States, of course, it no longer dictates everything, but it's still the most powerful country. So it can still put a lot of tremendous pressures on other countries who may want to shelter Mr. Snowden. So we're seeing the effect now. Almost no country is willing to give him a formal asylum. And so the chance that the U.S. eventually may be able to bring him back is still significant.
So this is what American bullying, you say, Constantine? Because we have this limbo of whether he's on a plane with the Bolivian president in Vienna, because Portugal and France won't grant the plane airspace rights, because he could be on board as Snowden. So this is all American bullying, is it not?
I'm not sure if it's American bullying or not, but it's clear that the countries who might give Snowden the asylum, they do not want to go public, so to say, So of course there is a huge possibility that some American special service might try to catch or even destroy Snowden, which is pretty normal in cases like this, and pretty normal in the international practice, especially in the 20th century. So we do remember a lot of such stories. Yeah. So it's normal for Snowden to be scared, and it's normal for other countries, at least countries valuing some, human rights, so to say, to try to save and, guarantee the safety of Mr. Snowden. So as I see it, there was a huge wave of American bullying from the start, but now the U.S. position is kind of changing. They are undertaking a very, very calm position right now, and I don't see where it's going, because Washington, when we speak about Snowden, is experiencing a crisis of the rhetorics right now. Different people say different things, and they don't have
changing their minds every day.
Yes, I don't think they don't have national and especially government unity about Mr. Snowden. So, not having a national and government unity on the case of Mr. Snowden, it's hard to bully him too hard, you know?
I mean, just because you're Russian, I just want to ask you this quickly.
Right.
So, do you think that the Russian lower house, the Duma, and the Kremlin don't agree on the same issue? Because the Duma has overwhelming support of anti-Americanism, or at least for Snowden.
Yeah.
And the president of Russia can easily just sign, we'll give you a visa, just come in, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But so far, nothing of the sort.
So far, nothing of the sort. Because, what we saw from the start is, was an exchange of very loud phrases between Russia and Washington, between Moscow and Washington. But then the guys understood that they're talking too fast. They need to think first. And I think what's going on in Russia is after they exchanged those loud phrases and maybe kind of offensive ones, Russian politicians started thinking, what do we need Snowden for? And that's why they're kind of passive right now. They cannot understand what do we Russians actually need him for. Just to annoy US, that's too small, right? Maybe get some extra info from him. There's a possibility that Snowden will give the same info away in any other country. So why take the risk? The mission of Mr. Snowden is already completed. He made the US lose face. So he's not normally needed anywhere anymore. His mission is completed. I want to repeat that. So I think it's mostly not the problem of the U.S. Of course, it is the problem of U.S. mostly now, but not the problem of any other country in the world right now.
His usefulness has expired.
He is exploited right now. Yeah.
And Tianli Wei, so how do you read Russia's stance on it? Putin said that while Moscow never hand over anybody anywhere, Snowden could only stay on condition that he stopped damaging Russia's American partners with his leaks. So how do you read this? Is this any subtle change from Russia's position?
I think in Russia there are two parties, I can say. Maybe in the internal affairs, like the Duma members can say everything they want, to criticize U.S. But in the position of President Putin, first he had expressed very hard tones, but then change his tones. Sometimes I think it's like a game, play with the Russians play with the Americans. So people are not focusing on what Snowden says sometimes, but would like to see this is a kind of very international drama. People are very interested in how the interactions between the Chinese, Russians and the Europeans, it's like a drama.
Yeah, pretty much like
interesting,
soap opera, Catch Snowden.
So people are judging who are the best actor now.
It shows you that how much the world has changed. That if this had happened maybe 30 years ago, 25 years ago, even 15 years ago.
This is also, I think, it's the power transition, the power shift from the government to the non-governmental forces. I also think that like Snowden and this kind of generation, the young people, like Bradley Manning, they are all just in their 30s. They are raised in a era in the 30s, and they are raised in the internet world age. So they want to learn everything. They are not afraid of any authority, government. They just want to do what they want to do.
And Bao Hui, actually, after Edward Snowden revoked his asylum seeking from Russia, he has sent asylum requests to more than 20 countries, including France, Ireland, Venezuela, and so on. So is it a smart move from him?
Well, I think it's merely a desperate move. He's running out of options. The best option for him is to be allowed to stay in Russia. But of course, President Putin has gave him the precondition, and he refused that precondition, and so now he has no other options. So he has to appeal to everyone. But that's the problem. Nobody is offering him asylum, and hopefully, the so-called rumor, the reporter that Bolivia is offering him asylum, but they couldn't fly him out of Europe. If that is true, at least Bolivia is trying to do something. But if that turns out to be indeed a rumor, then Snowden is still stranded in Moscow, and he doesn't have other options. And so I think his conditions are pretty serious. I think that brings us back to the previous topic, which is that the U.S. power is still pretty much the way of life that dictates world politics. We think the United States is in relative decline. It is. It is not as powerful as 20 years ago, 30 years, 10 years ago, but nonetheless, it is still the most powerful country, and so no country now wants to damage the relationship with the United States. Yeah, and that's Snowden's problem.
Well, because you're in Hong Kong, Bao Hui, we'll talk about Hong Kong's role in this in a bit. But do you think he regrets going from Hong Kong to Russia now? Because he could have gone anywhere. I
think he must be regretting now, because Hong Kong, looking back, could be the safest place for him, in the sense that if he's arrested, say, if Hong Kong government cooperates with the U.S. and they arrest him, and he could be out on bail, in a matter of hours, and then he would trigger his lawyers, his team of lawyers would trigger the legal process in Hong Kong, which could last for several years. And there's no guarantee that at the end of that process, the Hong Kong judicial system, all three levels of court, would essentially endorse the extradition. It's very likely that he can prove that his offense is political in nature, which is not covered by the extradition treaty between Hong Kong and the United States. And so Hong Kong actually is his safest place, but for some reason we couldn't fully explain. He decided to leave Hong Kong to go to perhaps a Latin American country, but he's now in big trouble.
Yes, and Constantine, just before we go to a break, so Putin has changed his position from day 1 to day 2 to day 3.
Yep.
How does that go down with the Russian public?
Well, Russian public's opinion differentiate a lot, but mainly what I see the reaction from Russian public is mainly we don't need him.
Right.
And I actually, what I was doing before was initially voicing the Russian public opinion. We don't need him. What do we need him for?
So Putin is reflecting public opinion as opposed to the Duma.
I think exactly in this case, his opinion does reflect the public opinion. Because, no, seriously, if you think about what can Snowden give Russia? Like, okay, when he was back in Hong Kong, it was big. He says the U.S. spies on China and hacks its websites, right? But what he does in Russia says that the U.S. is trying to hack the Russian websites. We know that. Right, so I don't think there's any extra info, precious info, very valuable info that Snowden can give Russians. Moreover, he's staying in Sheremetyevo airport for almost a week. I think they extracted everything from him already, so I don't see any point in getting him into Russia.
Okay, we'll take a short break. Back in a bit.
Expert analysis presented by an award-winning team today. 10 a.m. every day on 846 AM News Plus Radio and online at newsplusradio.cn, keeping you up to date and ahead of the news. Expert analysis presented by an award-winning team today. 10 a.m. every day on 846 AM News Plus Radio and online at newsplusradio.cn, keeping you up to date and ahead of the news.
You are listening to Today on News Plus. I'm Zhao Yang. Today's big debate is on American whistleblower Edward Snowden and the diplomatic implications of his revelation and endless plight in transit.
And I'm Ben Leung, and we're talking with us here in the studio, Qianli Wei, a research fellow from China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, and Konstantin Chopin, a Beijing-based Russian journalist. On the line from Hong Kong, we've got Zhang Baohui, Professor of Political Science at Lingnan University. So back to the debate.
Okay, so now I will start with Baohui. Actually, after Edward Snowden left Hong Kong, Washington and Hong Kong officials continue a war of words over the backroom maneuvering ahead of Snowden's departure. So do you see any deterioration in ties between the U.S. and Hong Kong after this case?
Well, I don't see long-term damages to the relationship. I think the U.S., after venting out its frustration initially, they probably has come back to their senses. They recognize, that Snowden is a hot potato for Hong Kong. They let him go in order to remove a problem between Hong Kong and the United States. So they probably recognize the I would say benign intentions behind the Hong Kong's decision. So I don't think it would do long-term damage to their relationship.
Not even like visa situations, because that was one of the things that, that
that's
they talked about.
One of the rumored things. But I don't think the U.S. would be that unwise, because what could you accomplish, right? You'll be to punish Hong Kong, and that makes yourself even worse in the eyes of Hong Kong people, So the U.S. Soft power, American soft power in Hong Kong has been tremendously damaged. Many people in Hong Kong, they tend to look to the United States as a role model of democracy, champion of human rights, and then they were kind of disgusted by the U.S. Intrusion into Hong Kong's security systems and computer systems, and so the soft power has been damaged. And the U.S. If the U.S. is wise, they should try to repair the relationship rather than trying to do further damage to that relationship.
But Baohui, just last question to you for now on Hong Kong is, when he was stuck in a hotel, a nice hotel in Kowloon, how did the media react to him being there? How did the public react to his presence on their own territory? Yeah,
I think initially, when he was staying in Mirror Hotel, actually the Hong Kong people's attitudes were kind of ambiguous. That he was merely someone who was passing through Hong Kong, they thought. But then he began to reveal very damaging information to the South China Morning Post. And after that, the Hong Kong public became very supportive of him. They have tremendous sympathy for him. And interestingly, we have a unique so-called bipartisan moment. Both the so-called Hong Kong opposition and the pro-establishment camp, they are kind of unified. They want to. Some logical members, actually, they're from the opposition side. They said we should help him, and indeed, his lawyer, one of the main lawyers was Albert Hall, the former leader of the
Democratic Party.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Snowden had a tremendous public support in Hong Kong.
But Li Hui, do you think he regrets going to Hong Kong because Hong Kong couldn't really? I mean, Hong Kong doesn't really have a free press, you can say. It's free in all but name, but it's all self-censorship. So I don't know. I couldn't quite understand why he went there. As someone from Hong Kong by birth, I can't quite understand why he went to somewhere which censors his own press by choice.
My understanding is that before Mr. Snowden went to Hong Kong, he has carefully calculated. And when he arrived in Hong Kong, he said, this is a place of freedom, and you have a free press, and this is a very good place. So I also reminded that when Snowden leaks the secrets to the Guardians and the Washington Post, it was the time that President Xi and Obama met at the Sunnyland.
Yes.
So this is a very good, selected time. A good time for Snowden to leak all these secrets.
But at the same time, you could argue that he could have done it a week later when the G8 was happening and Putin, Obama were seeing face to face.
Every step he chooses, yes, I think is calculative.
Right.
Very carefully selected.
No, I think Snowden, I think when he chose Hong Kong as his first destination, actually, he made a good decision. Now, looking back, as I said in the previous section, Hong Kong is the best place for him. Hong Kong is a very robust judicial system. Even if he's arrested by the Hong Kong government, he can trigger the legal process, which will last, people say, for 3 years. And the end outcome of that could be in his favor, So he didn't make the wrong decision to come to Hong Kong. It's the right decision. He made the wrong decision by leaving Hong Kong, and that got him into trouble now.
And Constantine, do you believe China had any say in this, Beijing particularly? Maybe not.
Well, yeah, now we get into the China hand. Well, yes, I believe so. But, it's pretty hard to discuss that because we don't have any proof. We know that China is maintaining that one country, two system policy, so Hong Kong is free to introduce a lot of its own policies. But initially, I think it's useless to underline that there's no Chinese hand whatsoever in Hong Kong because there's army over there. 2 days ago, we were celebrating
the handover.
Yes, the handover of Hong Kong to Mother China. And the celebration was pretty fun because the biggest event during the celebration were Chinese soldiers demonstrating their machine guns, and it was
the PLA office.
Yes, and it was big and it was all over the press. So if the Chinese army is over there, if all the official departments are over there, how can you say that there's no Chinese hand in this? I think it wouldn't be wise from the point of view of Beijing to play roughly in this case. I think China had a say, but it was playing with the hands of Hong Kong, right? I need to repeat myself. We don't have any proof for that. Right?
Well, from Chinese or Russian, to be honest.
Yes, but still, we can see that China has a huge dividend from Snowden stay in Hong Kong. There was huge information leaks, and China has got a good joker in its sleeve to blame U.S. in the future, especially with U.S. blaming China for the hacker attacks and whatsoever. So. The good side of Snowden staying in Hong Kong is obvious for Beijing. So I think Beijing tried to do everything to make him stay over there, and I surely think there was a huge influence from Beijing.
Yeah. And Qian Liwei, so how do you see it? Because now the U.S. and China, we have some problems in the cyber attack issues. But do you think Snowden case will impact China, U.S. maybe strategic dialogue will talk about this cybersecurity issues. So will this Snowden case impact something?
I don't think there will be a great impact on the SNED or the future of Sino-American relations, because this is just a small case among so many issues in the Sino-American relations. And now, as Snowden has left Hong Kong, so it's the hot potato is now President Putin's hand, not in ours anymore. But I'm also concerned because you have given us some questions, the talking points. I'm also concerned whether Snowden will come back to Hong Kong. Maybe, I don't know, the airport in Hong Kong. The transit area, the same transit area. He's not getting to Hong Kong, but he may be in the transit area.
Do you believe he's still in Moscow?
I don't know.
No one knows, really.
Yeah, maybe he
Moscow
on KGB or something. No one knows.
Moscow Airport is not that big. It's big enough, but it's not that big.
But it's not that big. But transit area is pretty convenient. You get a lot of vodka over there. So Snowden must be having yes. So Snowden must be having a lot of fun. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a short break. You're listening to Today on News Plus.
Expert analysis presented by an award-winning team. Today. 10 a.m. every day on 846 AM News Plus Radio and online at newsplusradio.cn, keeping you up to date and ahead of the news. Expert analysis presented by an award-winning team. Today. 10 a.m. every day on 846 AM News Plus Radio and online at newsplusradio.cn, keeping you up to date and ahead of the news.
Today's words shape tomorrow's discourse.
The future starts today.
Today's talk, tomorrow's world. Today.
Into Today on News Plus, I'm Zhao Yang. Today's big debate is on American whistleblower Edward Snowden and the diplomatic implications of his revelations and endless plight in transit.
And I'm Ben Leung, and we're talking in the studio with Qianli Wei, Research Fellow from China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, Konstantin Shepin, Beijing-based Russian journalist, and on the line from Hong Kong, Professor Zhang Baohui from the Department of Political Science at Hong Kong's Lingnan University.
But now back to our panel discussions. Actually, we talk a lot about the fate of Edward Snowden, but we want to also talk about some diplomatic repercussions. Allegations that the U.S. bugged the European embassy and the EU offices have caused outrage among some European leaders. But the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, says its activities were not unusual. As the political fallout continues, that Konstantin Shepin, I will start with you. Is it acceptable for a country to spy on its allies?
Well, theoretically, it's so to say not very ethical, I would say. But well, in everyday life, we having it on the daily basis actually, and but no one, everyone tries not to lose face while doing that stuff, So the point and the problem with the U.S. is that they lost face doing that. Snowden made it public, so right now U.S. looks very awkward. What actually happens on the international, globally, what happens globally is mainly U.S. positions itself as a pretty aggressive country, but fighting for the cause of human rights. And now we do understand that they're violating human rights on a big scale themselves. Like, if to take an example from everyday life, imagine yourself sitting, say, in the bar, smoking, and then the American comes in and starts yelling, you're ruining my lungs, and blah, 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 stop smoking, please, and being very aggressive. And, well, you are getting used to that. Okay, he's American, he's yelling, and he wants you to stop smoking. But in the same case, if a smoking cigar American comes into the bar and asks you to stop smoking, that will look weird, right?
Yes.
And that's what happens with Snowden.
Hypocrisy. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Double standards.
Yes, now USA turned into USH, United States of Hypocrisy, mainly. You know.
And so, Baohui, do you think there should be some ethics of intelligence gathering?
Well, I think in the intelligence world, anything goes, unfortunately. I think that's the rules of the game, you know. But even after saying that, what should states do? What could they do with regard to other countries' secrets? That should still, we should still have some parameters, and that I think. If the issue is raised, cybersecurity issue, if that is raised in the next Sino-U.S. strategic dialogue, the two countries should think about it. You know? But I think the Snowden's case, the repercussion is that, as the other panelists have said, it kind of leveled the playing field, you know, because until now, the U.S. has done a pretty good job in framing the issue, which is that it is a victim of cybersecurity, and China is a perpetrator. And now the Snowden case leveled the playing field, and that will give China a much better chance to discuss the issue in a more fair environment. You know, I think they should deal with the issue, no question about it. You know, but to set the parameters, to set the rules if possible. But I have to say, in the end, I'm kind of a pessimistic. You know, I think it is very difficult for both China and the U.S. to try to regulate the behaviors of their own intelligence communities. For those people, anything goes.
Yeah, but Li Hui, would you say, I mean, Tsinghua University had its old database scraped by the NSA, but, you know, as the panelists have said, intelligence gathering on your allies is nothing new. I mean, I remember watching documentaries, reading things about Roosevelt bugging Churchill, Churchill bugging de Gaulle, de Gaulle bugging Roosevelt, and these are the big three during the Second World War against Hitler, and on Stalin as well. So this is nothing new. It's just we now know how much it is in the open. There's nothing to stop someone from Britain from doing the whistleblowing on the British intelligence, or someone from Russia from doing its own whistleblowing on Russia.
I think it really is nothing new, but you can find even among the alliance members, as the NATO or the American-Japanese alliance, there's a different kind of alliance members, a different kind of friend. The English-spoken countries are the most closely connected because they're sharing their...
Is that the I-5 or something, what it's called? New Zealand, Australia, Canada,
yes.
America, and Britain.
I also remember the British historian, Paul Johnson, called it, it's a great America. You know, he proposed to establish English-spoken great America, you know. So they are the core of the alliances. You have to recognize this. As the France, Germany, and other continental European countries are quite different from these countries, I think. And on the other hand, because people watch the movies, I also visited Spy Museum in D.C., you know.
It's a good place.
Yeah, it's a very good place. And it's over, $25.
Yes.
But there's always a lot of people, kids, old men, everyone want to go there. And the people are very interested in these things. But for a country, everybody knows that nearly every country do the same thing, bugging, spying, espionage. It's very interesting, like 007, Golden Eyes, you know. But it is very difficult to, as somebody has proposed to have rules, because in the cyber world, they are not only the countries, there are also all kinds of forces, maybe hackers, maybe terrorists, maybe somebody, not a hacker, he just want to make some things, big things in the internet. So it's very difficult. If we have rules between, for example, United States, China, or Russia, but there are other players, other roles, how to regulate other roles, It's a very big problem.
But at the same time, Constantine, why should they regulate this? Because the whole point of being the president of your own country or the prime minister of your country is to look after national interests. If it harms your nation in terms of terrorist activities, trade, or cyber attacks, or whatever, you need to know these things. You need to have preemptive strikes or preventative measures in place.
Exactly. Well, I think what we're talking about here is like spying is normal. Spying has been normal for ages, right? I think what we're talking about right now is crisis of predictability in the field of spying, because the times of James C. Bondy stuff are over, and normally spies nowadays are pretty much predictable. Staying in the embassy, talking to the guys around in the foreign country, and then making some deals with them, and blah 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 blah. And they now, as I see it, most of them are pretty much predictable. I think Russia knows who does what in Chinese embassy. China knows what
every
who
embassy
does what.
is a spy den.
Yes,
technically.
yes. Technically, yes, it's true. So, but they're pretty much predictable. Back in Russian embassy in China, the Chinese guys from foreign ministry, they know who is who, right? So, and they're pretty much predictable. They know in advance who might they talk to or whatsoever. So it's predictable. When we got spying on the internet, that's a chaos right now. We like the laws on the internet. We like the technology to prevent the hacker attacks and so on, because hackers are developing quicker. They're most technically, maybe technologically advanced guys in the internet, because they know everything. They actually created the internet. There was a talk about Microsoft softwares. Before they get sent out to the customers, they have to go through American national security first for clearance. I think the biggest spies and terrorists in this case is Apple software guys. Right. Because you give away everything to them. So, and in this case, it's a point of predictability. We like regulations. We need software and hardware capabilities to prevent them.
But what if governments are the ones that sanction these regulations?
Governments want them to be predictable,
exactly.
And they fail to do that, and that's the problem.
But are they not compromised at the same time, though? They've got their own, ideals and wish lists that I'm not going to grant you regulations if it harms our intelligence gathering.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the world, the spy world, is returning back to chaos. In the end of last century, we've got it more or less regulated. Okay,
ethical spying.
Yes, ethical spying, because every spy is a friend to another spy. Okay, there are a couple of killings a year, and that's enough. Everyone is pretty much predictable, and now we've got the cyber spying, and that's a mess again, and no one is happy about that.
And just before we go to a break, Bao Hui, so we have ethical espionage, so-called, but everyone is having their emails read. I mean, I know in Britain the reaction has been quite low-key, lukewarm about all of this, because I think most members of the public they've just come around to the conclusion that whatever you do on the internet will be read by someone or farmed by someone anyway. So, are you surprised by that there hasn't been a more kind of global revulsion against this, or just people just being very passive about it?
I think if we read, for example, I've been following the comment section by honored people to the Snowden stories at the Guardian website, and most people are quite disturbed. I think the revelations show that the UK intelligence, American intelligence, their activities are totally unrestrained.
But I must stop you there, though, because the Guardian is the newspaper that broke it. So
it's a leftist paper. You can say that, but I think. Globally speaking, I think people are morally disturbed. This time it's a little bit different. I think for the first time people recognize the full extent of the unlimited intrusion of the cyberspace by the, I would say, Anglo-Saxon intelligence. And people do have some problems. And then the EU leaders, the German leaders, the French leaders, they are also reacting to this. So, but nevertheless, I think. As you have said, states they are all involved in intelligence gathering they are all spying other countries. That's the way of life. So how can we strike a balance? That's the issue now. How do we strike a balance between statecraft, traditional statecraft? You have to understand other countries. On the other hand, we have to factor in issues of privacy and some sense of morality. And so how can we strike a balance and set the rules for proper intelligence gathering? I think that is a challenge facing all the major countries. Maybe they should sit down and talk about it.
Well, I know the Guardian's very upset that all the other newspapers in Britain are not covering the story. So
they're not covering as Guardian.
They blame pettiness and jealousy or something, I think.
Well, that could be an explanation, I think. But I think globally speaking, I think many people are disturbed,
Sure. We'll take a short break. Back in a bit.
Expert analysis presented by an award-winning team. Today, 10 a.m. every day on 846 AM News Plus Radio and online at newsplusradio.cn. Keeping you up to date and ahead of the news. Expert analysis presented by an award-winning team. Today, 10 a.m. every day on 846 AM News Plus Radio and online at newsplusradio.cn. Keeping you up to date and ahead of the news.
Today's words shape tomorrow's discourse.
The future starts today.
Today's talk, tomorrow's world. Today.
You're listening to Today on News Plus. I'm Zhao Yang. Today's big debate is on American whistleblower Edward Snowden and the diplomatic implication of his revelations and endless plight in transit.
And in the last 10 minutes, we've got Tian Liwei, Research Fellow from China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, and also Konstantin Shippen, Beijing-based Russian journalist. On the line from Hong Kong, we have Zhang Baohui, Professor of Political Science from Hong Kong's Lingnan University.
Okay, but now back to our panel discussions. Baohui, after talking so much about Edward Snowden, so how much the state secrets does Edward Snowden still hold now? And will we see a further maybe crackdown on the whistleblowers from the U.S. intelligence agency?
Well, I think how much secrets, to your first question, how much secrets he still has in his hand, we don't know, right? I think, but one thing we can be certain is that he will continue to release those information through his partners, the British newspapers, maybe German newspapers, also those based in Hong Kong and the United States. So more information will come out. There's no doubt about it. And people said he has made backup copies and safely stored in some places. So even if he's arrested by the U.S., those information will still come out. And as for a second question, I think the U.S. will still try to bring him back precisely to deter other whistleblowers. The United States cannot afford to have more people like Sergeant Manning or Snowden to follow their examples, and do further damage to the so-called U.S. national security. So just to deter this prospect, they have to bring him to justice.
And Konstantin Shippen, so how far will the leak of U.S. mass surveillance program developing?
Oh, well, first I'd like to say a couple of words on the amount of how much information Snowden is still holding. I seriously doubt that he's holding too much extra information, because in case of Snowden, the information is his kind of currency. With this information, he might buy the way in some other country and get the shelter over there. Why none of the countries in the world right now are too willing to accept them?
Especially the Latin American ones.
Yes, because they're scared of U.S. I don't think that's the number one reason. I think that just Snowden can't buy his way in that country. He hasn't got enough information. The government asks, okay, we take you in, what can you give us? And Snowden says, I already told everything back in China. Yeah. So
As you said earlier, his value has expired.
Yes, exactly. So he can't offer anything, and from that point, judging that none of the countries are willing to take him in right now, I don't think he's got too much extra information right now. So I seriously doubt that there will be any huge extra leaks in the future from Mr. Snowden.
And if we talk about WikiLeaks, Li Hui, they had a whole month of really interesting documents and embassy cables and everything. But that petered out, a month later? And we thought they had 250,000 interesting documents on everything. So I can't imagine Snowden having that same amount. And if he's given all the good ones out already, then he really has no value left.
Well, I think we don't know what he has at this moment. I think the WikiLeaks mostly involve cables sent by U.S. embassies, consulates overseas. And they are merely often, I guess, the reports by lower-ranking diplomats. They don't really have that much value. But Snowden has the true inside story of how the U.S. intelligence operates overseas, what kind of information they are going after, how they are accessing other countries' information. So here, I think he has plenty of so-called state secrets. But the point is that he's not welcomed or accepted by any country doesn't necessarily prove that he doesn't have secrets left. They may come out later.
Li Hui?
First, I'm wondering whether what did he say is true, or partly true, or large part is true. The second is that I'm thinking about what he will reveal, the next step in the future.
He needs something substantial.
Yes. I want to call it more hardcore information.
Yeah, someone is gay or something like that.
Yeah, for example, because now there are the intelligence between the countries, China, US, Russia, the European Union. Maybe the personal information, for example, the French president, and how the French consider the German chancellor, or their personal lives. There will be more, I think, the hardcores, because they are really interferes into their personal lives. This is about the violating of the civil rights. So
this is what
the privacy.
So when he goes around to all these embassies, or he's got an intermediary on WikiLeaks to pass his asylum applications to embassies. It's like pitching a business to financiers and investors, saying, "This is what I have. Would you take a chance with me?" I mean, this is slightly more commercialized, is it not? It's like going to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I think just as I said, he's like a businessman. Yes.
Well, with WikiLeaks behind him, of course, he's a businessman.
Yes. Maybe WikiLeaks is his kind of agent. Yeah. How to do business with. I call it it's a legal fight. It's a diplomatic fight between among the powers, but also it's a political. Also, the media fight between all the medias, who is more competitive in reporting these issues.
Do you believe the last 4 minutes or so? Do you believe he's a hero or villain? Because his life has changed forever. You can't go back to America without getting arrested.
Right.
A life on the run can be fun, I guess, but it can be miserable because you've got someone going after you all the time. You don't know who these people are. Yeah. Could be your girlfriend, could be your neighbor.
Well, I think life for Mr. Snowden might be really miserable, especially as a man without the country. But on the other hand, what should Snowden do in the future? No one actually sure about that. Maybe he might just stay in the Sheremetyevo International Airport
and play Lego.
Yes, we've seen that famous movie with Tom Hanks. He stayed in the airport for 1 year, and it was fun for him, right? Well, Snowden might try to make it in the real life. He will be a real life hero, and we can shoot a movie about him after that. As about his choices in the future, well, when we were not on air, we already discussed the possibility of North Korea. I don't think that's the best choice, because if he gets in, he doubtly get out ever. Iran might be a nice choice, but personally, I think the life will what's not the swear word about that? It will
Terrible.
be problematic. Yes,
Problematic.
really problematic, because everyone is after him. After all the spy thing is over, the chase won't be over. He will be chased by journalists, right? There will be chase number 2. Number 3 will be by whosoever it might be, new so-to-called friends or whatever it is. But if to speak about the man without the country, I think that will be very problematic from the hard issues. We all remember the case of Mr. Berezovsky,
Yes.
who perished recently. He kept writing letters to President with a request to take him back to Mother Russia.
Yeah.
And I think that sooner or later happens in the heart of every human being.
Because he died in west of London, Ascot,
Yes,
in
yes,
his house. He was
yes.
found dead in the shower, wasn't he?
But before death, for 3 or 4 years, he kept writing to Mr. Putin.
Asking
and
for clemency.
Yes, because he missed his motherland a lot. And I don't think that this kind of feeling sits only in Russian soul. I think it's kind of global, right? So I do not exclude that he will miss his hometown a lot, and it will be a little personal tragedy, I think.
Well, I mean, his father's already sort of said things his father hasn't spoken to him for 2 weeks, and he wants to get in a direct line with his son, but there's no way of knowing. And it's fair to say I think it's a very noble thing what he did, because forget what he did, the data itself, but it's to give up your entire life and anonymity.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big sacrifice. But anyway,
Right.
we've got to go. So thanks for all of us. Thanks for all of you. We were joined in the studio by Tianli Wei, Research Fellow from China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, Konstantin Shepin, a Beijing-based Russian journalist, and from Hong Kong on the line, Zhang Baohui, Professor of Political Science from Hong Kong's Lingnan University. In the next hour, we've got Su Jingdo will be here for Global Talk. Thanks to Jiao Yang. We'll be talking about Syria tomorrow. Join us then.